If your view of life is the view that arises from thought, it is a mistaken view. What we call human wisdom consists of a pattern of behavior, of actions, of a worldview based on thought, and from thought, every action is inadequate. There is a very simple and direct difference, very basic for all of us. All this behavior we generally have is born from what thought is determining. This quality of action is the reaction that comes from the past. Notice how simple this is. The name you have for who you are is an expression. It is a word. Your name has 3 words or 4, 2 or more than 4 words. That is your name. That is a memory record, something in you that arises from the past. You have given that name the idea of your identity. When you say your name, you believe yourself to be the person who has that name. But what is the truth of your name? A memory, a recollection, a thought, or better yet, an idea, a set of words, a set of thoughts that form an idea. That idea is your name. That name is the name of the person. But who is the person? Who is the person you can describe to me about yourself? Every description you have about yourself is nothing but a set of words that also form an idea. That idea is your story. But what story are we talking about? It is the story of this body, of everything that in thought can be remembered, inside your brain, inside your head. But that story is not you. That name is not you. The response you have to life, to making decisions, to acting, to behaving within relationships, notice this, is also something that arises from thought. But what is thought? Thought is the past. So these words, this idea, which is this set of words, are various thoughts and, therefore, images, recollections of what happened, of what once was. This has no truth whatsoever in this moment. It is only a set of recollections, of memories, of remembrances. That is the person. That is you. This remembrance, in this instant, is the idea of someone who is present. Look, he is not present. This someone is not present. This someone is an image. Notice the importance of this understanding. There is no one present here being you. This you is a set of recollections, of memories. This forms an image, a self-image, a construction of thought there, in this brain. So, in your brain, the truth about you is an image, a self-image that thought has established. You and the self-image are the person you can describe, that you can name, that you can talk about. But what is the truth about you when this self-image is not present? When these recollections, memories, remembrances are not present? Notice that you have no answer to this, and in fact, you have no answer at all. You might say that you are the spirit, the soul, the higher self. But once again, you are using expressions, words that you learned, that someone once told you about who you are. Now you are giving yet another description of yourself. This other description is also part of, observe this, part of memory, of recollection, of knowledge, and therefore of the past. If we eliminate the past, memory, recollection, thought, any set of ideas, any set of memories, what do we have? What is the reality of this being? That is the question. Our work together here consists of investigating the truth about this self-image, for the end of the self-image. Our work here consists of having a direct understanding of what thought is, for the end of thought. Because only when we have the end of thought, the end of memory, of recollection, of remembrance, do we have a real possibility for something new. Since thought in us is the presence of the past, it is the presence of the known. What we have is constantly thought speaking of itself in the first person. What we have is constantly thought expressing itself from the idea of this first person, which is the I in action. When you say, I think, I do, I feel, what is the truth about that? The truth is that we are only dealing with an imagination because we know nothing of that action when it happens, of that feeling when it arises, of that thought when it appears. When thought appears in you, in your brain, a mechanism of recollection, of remembrance, of appearance of past images is processed. That is the presence of thought. The process of thinking in you. So here we have the answer to the question, what is thinking? Thinking is when the brain processes thoughts. It processes from what it already has, from what it already knows, from what it is already familiar with, from what it has stored. This is memory. Therefore, thought in you is the presence of memory. It is the presence of recollection. When this process arises, thinking arises in that instant. The movement of thought in you is the presence of thinking. So, when there is an internal movement of thought in you, we have a mechanical movement of response from the past, and therefore a reaction from memory. This is the presence of thinking. However, there is no such thing present as someone in that process, as we believe. We believe that we have, in this thinking process, the presence of this I, of this me, of this person, of this thinker thinking. See, this is not real. We are faced with an imagination constructed by thought. Thought has constructed an image of itself. The image that thought has of itself is the image of someone who is thinking, who is feeling, who is acting, of someone who is speaking, of someone who is listening. This is something we are very certain of, the idea of being present in this moment, having experiences like this one here, of hearing this talk. Here, we are faced with a reality that escapes us, the reality of life itself, where everything happens within it. There is no I, no me, no person present in life. Here, this hearing happens, this speaking too, this feeling too, this thinking too. The idea of someone present, separate from the experience itself, which is speaking, feeling, perceiving, acting, is something thought has established as being true for us. And so we appear on the scene as this me, this I, this person. This is what we are here investigating with you, because what we are telling you here very clearly is that unless we have the end of this self-image, the end of this I, of this me, we will never know the reality of life as it is. Because this knowing the reality of life is being the reality of life. There will be no element present in this knowing, because such an element does not exist. And another point here is that this vision is not in the future. We have no one for this vision. and we have no future for this vision. That is wonderful news, to know that the reality of life is here and now, and that there is no me, no you, for this vision. Here, it is about becoming aware of the truth about ourselves. It is when you know the truth of what you are. This knowing is the direct recognition of the illusion of this I, of this me. Therefore, this knowing is not someone knowing themselves. It is the presence of knowing, which I have presented here as comprehension. This real knowing is comprehension. It is not someone becoming aware of themselves. It is the awareness that there is no one. When this becomes clear, the reality of life reveals itself in this instant. Free from the I, free from the ego, and therefore free from the past. Free from all that story thought has built about who you are. The encounter with this instant is the revelation of this instant. In this encounter, we are not going to take on a vision of life through any technique or practice for its realization. We are simply going to become aware of the reality of life in this instant, by discarding precisely the illusion of someone having an experience, seeking to acquire some level of knowledge. It is not knowledge to be acquired. It is not an experience to be achieved, as some believe. The awareness of the revelation of God is the revelation revealing itself. The revelation self-revealing, when the I is not there, when the experiencer is not there, when the seeker is no longer present. Therefore, it is the end of the self-image, the truth for the end of thought. Yes, we do not need thought to deal with life. What we need is the presence of intelligence, the vision of life as it happens, not the presence of thought. Yes, at a certain level, thought appears as part of life's own mysterious movement. For dealing with practical matters, thought proves necessary. But to deal with the totality of life, such as, for example, our relationships with people, we do not need thought. What we do need is the awareness of this being. This awareness of being is the presence of intelligence, of this divine presence, where in that contact with him or her, in that contact with ourselves, in that contact with situations that arise in life, there is no separation between you and life, between you and the other. So here together, comprehension is the vision of divine intelligence, of supreme wisdom, of the wisdom of God. What we have called human wisdom, what is that wisdom? If we do not know how to deal with ourselves, we do not have the foundation for the truth of wisdom. When we use expressions such as human wisdom, spiritual wisdom, stoic wisdom, or divine wisdom, the only reality present is the truth of wisdom. We are dividing this word and subdividing this word. Wisdom is the awareness of the unknown. There is no one present when wisdom is present. That is why we are dealing with the wisdom of God, with real wisdom. When we have the truth of what you are, we no longer have you as someone expressing themselves from a construction of thought, from an imagination of thought, from an idea established in you by the past, by all those recollections that come from the past. Why does this become fundamental in life? Because without it, what we have as life is the life of the person, of this ego identity. And we know very well what confusion is, what conflict is, what contradiction is, what envy is, Fear, jealousy, anguish, depression, fear. We know what that is, don't we? Maybe not. Maybe we are living through all these internal states of psychological suffering, but we do not have a real direct view of it. And that is what we are presenting to you here. We have the belief in the contact and the experience of all these conflicting and distressing states of the very I, of the very ego. But we are unaware because we have never truly approached this situation, this psychological condition, to investigate the nature of this ego, the nature of this I, the truth about the person we believe we are. So the truth about you is here to be investigated, clarified. It is when we investigate, look closely, go deeper, clarify, in this clarity, lucidity, and real vision, that this psychological condition comes to an end. And thus, this sense of confusion and psychological suffering dissolves. That is the awakening of your divine nature. It is the awakening of the truth about you. We have this with the end of the I, with the end of the ego. So first of all, we need to come closer to ourselves. Through self-awareness, through a direct vision of how we function internally, psychologically, for the end of this internal psychological condition of egoic patterns of action and a life centered in this sense of separation. Between you and life itself, between you and the other, you in contradiction and conflict with yourself. The end of this psychological condition of duality requires investigation, the study of ourselves. It requires the presence of self-awareness. Since the foundation that sustains this condition is that element which is the presence of the thinker, which is nothing other than thought itself, which is the presence of this me, which is nothing other than this person that thought says I am. This me, this person, this I are basically thought. The elimination of this psychological condition is coming face to face, in this instant, with that which lies beyond the known, beyond the mind, beyond the I. So I say again, your contact with life as it happens does not require the presence of thought. If you are going to learn something technical, yes, naturally, there will be the presence of thought, of knowledge, and of experience. But aside from this technical knowledge, like learning a profession or taking a specialized course, aside from this, you do not need thought to deal with. Thoughts there, emotions there, feelings there, relationships with your husband, with your wife, with your family, with the world around you. Dealing with thoughts does not require the presence of thought. Dealing with feelings requires the presence of thought. With emotions, it does not. And with relationships, it does not either. It is the presence of the vision of life as it happens, in this instant, free from the past, a quiet brain, a silent mind, a vision of this moment without the sense of the I, of the ego, of this me. That is the presence of meditation. It is the beauty of this encounter with the truth of what you are, which is self-awareness. It is part of meditation. When in this instant we have the presence of an attention to our reactions, we can bring an end to those reactions, for a response that is free from the past for this instant. Therefore, the presence of self-awareness is the presence of this encounter with life that reveals the truth of God, which is meditation. Becoming aware of life is to be in this instant free from the past, free from the illusion of the I. If this is something that makes sense to you, consider leaving a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment here. Yes, this makes sense. Thanks for watching, and until next time.